Hope is the physician of each misery. Irish proverb. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, we are back at it again. Um, if you missed yesterday's episode, it did happen. I want to point this out. Um, I'm just going to be brief about this. I described what happened in last night's episode. So if you woke up in the morning and you got your coffee and you were just like kind of shuffling your feet around, you're like, all right, let's see what DL is talking about. And you looked and you were like, there's no DL. And then you had to have like a second cup of coffee just to double check and make sure that, reality was real or something, right? Like if there was just this craziness going on in your mind, like what happened? Okay, nobody's doing all that. But anyway, if you didn't see an episode yesterday, basically I ended up staying up late, woke up late, had some family things, and it just wasn't working. Like I don't want to make it sound trivial, but it was not a good day yesterday. Like everything came at me. So I was like, all right, we'll try to do this a little bit later. So I ended up doing the show last night at 6:30 p.m. Almost went 2 hours. So you could kind of look at that as like bonus content, I guess. Anyway, today's going to be a little shorter episode. So make sure you go check that out for me, folks, if you didn't see it. But today's going to be a shorter episode because my son has a ceremony where he's transitioning from kindergarten to first grade. So I have a hard stop today at 8:15. So just want to let you know that. What am I talking about today? President Biden and Scott Adams both recently have come out and divulged that they have prostate cancer that has metastasized into the bones. Now, Scott Adams is 67, so still a relatively young fellow. Biden is 82. So, in a sense, it's a little bit less surprising that Biden has it. The only surprise that we have really is that, like, he's the president and he has the best medical care of probably anyone on this planet. So the idea that, it would get to that point without being treated it seems a bit surprising, and people are speculating. This is another one of those instances where all of a sudden the whole of the internet become experts at something. I am not an expert. I am not going to sit here and try to tell you everything I know about how to treat cancer, what drugs you should take, what you should do. I don't really know any of that. I've read some things that are interesting, and sure, I could have a casual conversation, but I'm not going to be kind of suggesting anything. And to be honest with you, I think people need to knock it off. Like, it's okay to be ignorant and not know stuff and just be like, yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with this topic, and you could just say, like, I feel bad for the guy, or, I feel bad for his family, or what have you. Or you could just not say anything. There hasn't been any commentary from President Biden, but Scott Adams did come out, and on his podcast, he divulged the information. So I wanted to play some of the videos, and I don't even think I set the videos up. We got distracted this morning getting my son and everybody ready. So let me get these in the queue here real quick so that we can play them. So I'm just adding these. So give me just a second here as I do what I should have done earlier, which is have all my videos queued up and ready. Last one here. So you can't see what I'm doing. It's magic behind the scenes. But there we go. We should be good. So let's hear what Scott Adams had to say.
Some of you have already guessed, so this won't surprise you at all. But I have the same cancer that Joe Biden has. So I also have prostate cancer that has also spread to my bones. But I've had it longer than he's had it. Well, longer than he's admitted having it. So my life expectancy is maybe the summer. I expect to be checking out from this domain sometime this summer. Now,
Wow. Like, I want you to just kind of put yourself in those shoes. And I want you to imagine that you have to tell people, friends, maybe you get your diagnosis, maybe you divulge it to immediate family members or maybe like a best friend. But now imagine that you're going to have that conversation with people that you know, or maybe that you don't know. Maybe your personality and you have your own podcast. But just imagine the feeling of telling people, like, hey, it is almost June and I don't expect to live beyond summer. That's got to be like just the casualness for which he said that leads me to believe that he's had this for quite a while and he has went through everything he needs to go through mentally to process and deal with this, because he seems pretty stoic. Like, and at a certain point, that kind of is your only choice. It's all you got. So it's kind of interesting. Let's check out this second video here, and these are all clips from that I saw on the internet that I thought were good clips from his podcast. So here's the next one here.
having watched how people treated Joe Biden when the diagnosis came, people are really cruel. They're really bad. And I was expecting, and of course it's going to happen, people are going to say it's because I got the COVID shot. There's no indication that that makes a difference. People are going to say it's something I brought on myself. They're going to say it's because I lived a bad life. I don't know. But people are going to be really, really terrible.
He is absolutely correct. The moment that we learned President Biden had cancer, man, it was just trash posting all over the place. And I was like, God, you people are disgusting. This is just, like, at some point, you have to recognize that you are now just showing your lack of humanity. Yours. And I'll talk more about that in a moment here. But it's true. People are like, and if you go back and you look at famous people who we found out were on death's door, um, people just seem to have no reservations with speaking ill. And I think it's quite sad. I think it says something about our society. And look, and I'll address it in a moment. I get it. A lot of people are like, yeah, but this person did all these bad things, and this person did all. Yeah, that's it. We're still talking about you, about how you are talking about other people. It's kind of like if you see, and I know I'm deviating here. We'll get back to what Scott says. It's kind of like when someone's like, "Oh, that kid is hurting animals. he's going to transition to people soon. It's kind of like I feel like it says something about you, and it says something about what kind of person you could actually be. People like to think that they're really good people, but then if the moment somebody who's a political opponent gets a disease and then you just dive right into trashing them, well, I think that's kind of in a way similar to, hey, this person that kills animals, they could easily transition to kill people. What could you easily become just based on that? Let's continue listening.
So I wanted to reduce the number of months or weeks. I don't know what I have left, weeks or months. Wanted to reduce the time that people were being terrible to me online because it's going to be kind of hard to spend any time online. All of my enemies, in other words, people who are Democrats mostly, are going to come after me pretty hard. So I have to put up with that. But I'm ready for that. You should know, well, if you didn't already know, I am unusually mentally tough. So while this could be much worse, for some people, I suppose, I'm handling it quite well. The pain is tough. I mean, really tough. But the mental part, I got that under control. And I can see in the comments that some of you are having a tough time with it. But remember, nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever. So I hope you don't mind that I hid it from you. I wanted as many normal months as I could get. Now, many of you are going to ask me a lot of questions. You're going to say,
All right, so that's the end of that clip. I think that's interesting that he's like, "Look, I purposely didn't tell you because I want as many normal months as possible." But that also extends to like his friends and family. Because I want you to think about this. Put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is a family member or a very close friend of someone who has cancer. And imagine that person happens to be a lightning rod and they say maybe controversial things, but then now everybody jumps on board to say all these mean and terrible things like, I hope you die, blah, 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 whatever terrible things that people say. I want you to imagine that you're the person that has to watch this person who's at the end of their life go through. Now, maybe they deserve it, right? It's possible. Some people live such bad lives where speaking ill of them at the end of their life or as they're dying or after they're dying is like deserved based on the way they live. But just because somebody deserves something doesn't mean that you should do it. Because again, we're talking about what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of society would you like to have? Do you want one where it's just literally a free for all? It's funny because libertarians get this reputation for, oh, they would step over dead bodies in the streets because they don't want any regulation. They just love people, they would be happy and okay and content with people just dying all over the place. And that's not really true. But it's interesting because that's what a lot of people show themselves, and not a lot of people being not libertarians, a lot of conservative. It depends on who it is, right? If the person that has cancer is more right leaning than all the left leaning people, not all of them, but many left leaning people will show their true colors, who they really can be. And then vice versa. If the person who has cancer happens to be a person on the left, like President Biden, then many people on the right will show the kind of person they can be. And it's interesting because libertarians like us have been told this is how you would behave, this is what you'd be comfortable with. But then I look and I say, I don't know. Looks like the world around me is pretty comfortable with being terrible people. So perhaps you can take that finger that you've got pointed at me and just kind of close it back into your fist, right? So here's a third video, and this is the last one that I'm going to play. It's a little bit longer, and I thought there was some interesting commentary from Scott here.
now I realize that for some of you, this is hitting you kind of hard because you're hearing it for the first time. Weirdly, since it's old news to me, I've just sort of processed it. So it just sort of is what it is. And I have to say that, everybody has to die, as far as I know. And it's kind of civilized that you know about how long you have so you can put your affairs together and make sure you've said your goodbyes and done all the things you need to do. So if you had to pick a way to die, this one's really painful, like really, really painful. Um, but it's also kind of good that it gives you enough time while your brain is still working to wrap things up. You
So I want to pause there because I want to take this moment to kind of point out he's kind of correct. And I've never, obviously, I'm not on death's door, so I can't speak, but he's right from a perspective of observation, right? Just observing. And if you think about it, how many people, like it's that old adage, like never leave, like never leave the house angry at your wife kind of a thing or whatnot, because it could be the last time that you see them. Or you've heard about people where maybe they had a fight with a family member and then some tragedy happened and they were like, and the last thing that they remember is the negative experience that they had. And they're like, "Well, I didn't get to say this," or "I can't believe this was the last comment that I got to say." Right? And I think this is a good reason to kind of really consider, how is it that we live? How do we treat people, right, around us? Because if something were to happen, think about the last thing that you said that was mean to somebody. Would you be like, would you feel good about yourself and say, "You know what? I'm glad that was the last comment that I got to make towards so and so." And I would say that probably in most cases, most people would not feel good about it. So I think that, this is an opportunity for reflection by people, because it's true, everybody dies. And I think this is where, th- if there was one area where, maybe two, but if there's one area where humanity should be able to come together, I think it would be death, because it comes for all of us. And the thing is, like he just pointed out, you don't get a say when that comes. It could be you get hit by a bus and then there was no time to get your affairs in order. There was no time to say that last goodbye. Or it could be something like cancer, where you're dying and you have time to at least say your goodbyes, say all the things that you wanted to say, and more importantly, leave the world on the best foot that you possibly can. Because I assume that most people, if they were dying, they would want to be able to tell their loved ones something positive and have an enjoyable last few moments, whenever those moments might be. Let's continue listening.
might wonder why it took me so long to tell you, and I think I owe you an answer to that. Number one, it would change my life because everybody would start treating me like the cancer guy. You can't really back like there's no second way that goes. Once you go public, you're just the dying cancer guy. And I didn't want you to have to think about it, and I didn't want to have to think about it. You should know, well, if you didn't already know, I am unusually mentally tough. So while this could be much worse, for some people, I suppose, I'm handling it quite well. The pain is tough. I mean, really tough. But the mental part, I got that under control. And I can see in the comments that some of you are having a tough time with it. But remember, nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever.
All right. So those are the clips that I wanted to play. And I think he's correct. And the interesting thing is, if you notice, he my impression is that he is trying to go out on his own terms. And I think people largely should respect that. Now, an observation that I've had is, by the time that somebody has cancer, I just want to point this out to folks. Your advice on what you think they should do probably isn't going to be any of any value. It's not going to be useful, especially if it's a more public figure. If it's like a close family member who just found out, then sure, maybe you might say, "Hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that?" Right? Because and I get it. There's that desire to try to be helpful to people, right? Because like, and that's a good thing. But I think we also have to try to balance that with what does this person want? Does this person want to be treated like the cancer patient? Or do they want to go out with as much dignity as possible? And so when you have a loved one that's dying, just put that into your mind. Just say, like, is this person, what is it that this person desires? Um, and then go with that. Go with did I not? Oh, yeah. I'm trying to do a couple of different things at the same time. Go with what they want. If you're trying to be respectful to somebody, go with what they are looking to accomplish. Like, how do they just want your pity? Maybe they do. I doubt it. Maybe initially, the first time that somebody learns about it, but after they come to terms, I think that actually what you find is they want to go out with their dignity, not as the cancer patient, but as hey, the loved one or the friend who ended up getting cancer and passed away, and we thought they were awesome and great, and we had the best time that we could possibly have all the way up until the end. Like that's I think the message that we should be getting here from Scott. And so I think we have to learn to because I saw a lot of comments to Scott. They're like, "Oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? This doctor, this medication, try this diet, whatever." And it's like, slow down, people, slow down. You're not listening to him. What he said was he doesn't want to be the cancer patient. He wants to be Scott Adams. So try and treat him as much as you can like Scott Adams. These are his last moments on earth. Try to respect that. So now let me shift into something a little bit different here. Let's see. There we go. Transition over here. So here's what I initially said when I heard about President Biden. I said I didn't rejoice when Limbaugh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, McCain, or anyone else died of cancer. It's a horrible disease, and anyone claiming morality should remember that. And then I put in quotations here, but so and so was terrible. And then I said, cancer took them out well after their actions. At this point, you're just a terrible person. So here's the thing. I am not a supporter of Biden at any point ever. And I think that he's been responsible for some very awful legislation, right? Um, but the time to deal with that was when he was in office. And he had a pretty long career for people to say, that's a bad idea. Let's push back against it. And when somebody's in office and they're actively doing things, I think that is the time to to mount the strongest opposition if you oppose what they're doing. I also think that's the time to mock them, to ridicule them, right? Because the goal is to change the behavior. That's the goal. That's the reason that we do this. We make fun of our politicians because we're like, hey, that's wrong. I'm going to mock you for it so that you feel bad and hopefully you change at least a little bit. But once they're out of office, once they're no longer able to do these kind of things that you may disagree with, well, now what's the goal? You can't change them. Like, okay, Biden has cancer. Is he going to look at the He's not going to look at the comments, but if he did, is he going to look at the comments and be like, man, these guys are right. I lived a crappy life. I did some terrible things. I'm going to apologize on my deathbed. The likelihood at that point, he's not going to. If he didn't do it while he was engaging in those actions, the likelihood that he's going to do it after is extremely low. And at that point, what I think, and the reason I say these kind of things, is I think that at this point, all you're doing is just being that terrible person because there's no real goal. There's really no end here for for justice or for the right thing to do. For I don't know, I'm getting a little tongue tied here just because I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to articulate that I think there is a distinct difference that we can look at in ourselves when we're being because look, I don't oppose being terrible to politicians. I think we should. I think we should bully them. But I think when somebody's on death's door, well, now we can you don't have to um you don't have to feel sorry for them. You don't have to offer them thoughts and prayers. You don't have to do anything. You can actually just be quiet and not say anything. Be like, okay, this person's on death's door. That's the way it is. Right? Because at this point you're not going to change anything. The time for your actions to change has come to an end. It's a done deal. So we might as well stand in solidarity since death comes for us all. So I just wanted to give some thoughts on that. Now, I will say this. I got a few more minutes before I have to cut out of here. Um, you know, there is speculation about this, like, hey, how long did they know about his cancer? I think that's fair because that involves people who are not on death's door. Like, why didn't you tell people what was going on? What were you hiding? Why were you hiding it? Right. So I want you to assume something because I think this is a point that a lot of Trump supporters, especially Trump supporters, people who voted for Trump explicitly because he was not Kamala Harris. And they were like, look, Kamala Harris will be that much worse. I'm not arguing that point. You can have that argument. I'm just saying that I know there are people that voted for Trump because they felt Harris was that bad. So I want you to think about this. Biden's cancer was probably, it's not guaranteed, probably known long before. My guess, they totally knew while he was running for office, while he was running for reelection. The delay in him dropping out was deliberate. As far as what like, I assume what they were attempting to do was get him reelected so that when he inevitably had to step down, because he would have, then they would be able to get Kamala Harris in. And I believe, based on just observation, they didn't have anybody. And so they delayed it on purpose because it was like, all right, if we could just get him through the election, then we will still have our guy, or in this case, gal, in office, our person. So they were doing their best to try to help to try to get him through. And then once it became clear that they could no longer even fake it till they make it, right? Like that was no longer possible. Then they said, okay, let's run Kamala Harris. And if you remember, a lot of people pointed out that she didn't really do that many interviews at first, and she kind of ran this almost quiet, comparatively speaking, campaign. And then she ended up going out to different podcasts and different shows, and then she did very terrible, and then she ended up losing. So many people voted for Trump because she wasn't as bad as Trump. So you, in some sense, you might appreciate the fact that this was hidden on some level because I think it further guaranteed Trump's win. Now, the alternative is that all of this was perhaps Trump being selected before he was elected. Perhaps powers that be, if you believe in the deep state, if you believe that people are scheming behind the scenes to keep power, if you believe that the duopoly is basically one and the same, then the alternative potential idea that you could come up with, or a conspiracy, is that Trump was selected and that all these things played into ensuring that Trump would be elected. Hey, let's keep Biden running. People will clearly and obviously know that he's not doing well. And then by the time that we get him to drop out, it will be simply too late for us to have anybody else. So we'll go with Kamala Harris, knowing that people are going to reject her because she simply does not have what it takes to beat Trump in a one-on-one race. So those are just thoughts. I'm not going to sit firm on any of those ideas because at the end of the day, it's just speculation. That's all it is. And so I think it's okay to speculate. because we are still talking about politics. We are talking about, people that are living. A lot of people were involved. This was Biden's decision to step down, Biden's decision to announce that he had, like, none of this is all entirely on him. Nobody else is involved. Other people are involved. Those people are alive. Those people are actively in politics. Those people are actively doing things. Therefore, I think these kind of conversations are appropriate. But I do think that we need to just try to dial it down on the hate and the rhetoric toward other people. And just remember, one day we will be at death's door, and maybe you'll have cancer. Do you want to be the cancer patient, or would you rather be whoever you are, finishing up a life, right? So it's kind of a call to humanity today. I got one last thing that I want to read to you. This comes from Christopher Hitchens. So you may recognize him. He was one of the, way back in the day, he was one of the four horsemen of, why is this not, there we go. He was one of the four horsemen of atheism, and he passed away from cancer, esophageal cancer. So I just want to read to you, why is this not working? There we go. So I just want to read the first paragraph here. The link is in the show notes. Feel free to go and check it out. But let me just read this first paragraph, because he describes in a very interesting way what it feels like to have cancer. So here's what he said. I have more than once in my time woken up feeling like death, but nothing prepared me for the early morning last June when I came to consciousness feeling as if I were actually shackled to my own corpse. The whole cave of my chest and thorax seemed to have been hollowed out and then refilled with slow drying cement. I could faintly hear myself breathe, but could not manage to inflate my lungs. My heart was beating either too much, or either much too much, or much too little. Any movement, however slight, required forethought and planning. It took strenuous effort for me to cross the room of my New York hotel and summon the emergency services. They arrived with great dispatch and behaved with immense courtesy and professionalism. I had the time to wonder why they needed so many boots and helmets and so much heavy backup equipment. But now that I view the scene in retrospect, I see it as a very gentle and firm deportation, taking me from the country of the well across the stark frontier that marks off the land of malady. Within a few hours, having to do quite a lot of emergency work on my heart and my lungs, the physicians at this sad border post had shown me a few other postcards from the interior and told me that my immediate next stop would have to be with an oncologist. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. Feel free to go and read the whole article. I think I don't believe that it's behind a paywall. I think it's just doing that because I'm using Opera as a browser. But go read what Christopher Hitchens had to say about his experience with cancer. And always remember that what you do and what you say in most cases says more about you than other people. So you may be trying to trash somebody who is a bad public servant, but at the end of the day, it's a fine line where you're crossing over and now you're just making yourself look bad. So consider that, folks. All right, let me look at a couple comments here real quick, and then I will head on out of here. Let's see. I like Liberty Dad in the morning. I like being in the morning too. Where's my music there? I like doing it in the morning too. It really throws off my schedule to do it in the evening. However, speaking of, I am still planning to have an evening show Wednesday night. So Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning, I may or may not do I will do a show, but it may or may not be premium. I may split it up and do like a very short show where it's public and then dive right into premium, because I do need to get the premium hours for the creator program that I'm in. So look for that. So we'll see what I do tomorrow. There'll definitely be a show, but it may be split a little bit more heavy on the premium side. But yeah, when I do those evening shows, especially when they're ad hoc, when they're not planned, it really throws off the schedule. Let's see. DL, we know some real estate people. The house stager that I knew and recommended said she was very happy that Rush Limbaugh died. I don't recommend her anymore. The party of love shows their colors. You know, like you can dislike Rush Limbaugh or anybody for that matter, and that's fine. But I think sometimes we just need to remember what is that? Was that movie? That children's movie, Bambi. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I think we need to remember what Thumper said. Let's see. From the minute we are born, we are dying. That is sadly true. All right, folks. Let's head out for today. I got to go and watch my son graduate from kindergarten. So, hooray. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.